So I'm a senior studying linguistics. This is my last quarter at Western. And like Dr. Denham said, this grew out of interest in a new syntactic form. And grammaticalization just happened to coincide with this research. So there might be some people in the audience that are unfamiliar with grammaticalization, either as a research framework or as a phenomena, but tendency to describe grammaticalization as moving from lexical to more grammatical over time. So these are for forms or other types of grammatical functions. And my investigation is about specific phenomena. And I'll look at it at various levels of linguistic analysis. So semantic, pragmatic, morphosyntactic, phonological changes, and we'll look at those throughout time. And so here is some traditional examples of how this word because is used in English. So this is from the 19th century, Mark Twain quote, "I know it because she told me so herself." So here, because introducing a clause. The second here, this is from Bonfire of the Vanities, so more recent. "He couldn't turn left because of the wall." So here, introducing a prepositional phrase. But recently, because has been able to take some new complements introduced, in this case, noun phrases. So a couple of these are from the microblogging platform Tumblr. I'll just read the second one. "I can't come out tonight because homework." And then interestingly, the third one here is from the Financial Post. This is a Canadian business website. "Super Mario Run will require an always-on internet connection because reasons." So that may sound new or cheeky or something, but what's really interesting is that is the title of an article that then goes on to provide investment strategies for blue chip stocks for Canadian citizens. So quite a different register from Tumblr. And we'll see that theme go on here. So from the Atlantic, English has a new preposition because internet, in this case reporting on this phenomena itself. I'd like to skip the second example and go to the third. This is from Esquire. "There are terrorist attacks happening and the media not only are not reporting them, they don't want to report them because reasons." So this may still convey that same type of shared meaning of irony or reference, but certainly in a new way and a topic that's much more serious. So I was really interested in studying because this is a brand new syntactic phenomena and it has not gone unnoticed. So Gretchen McCulloch has done some kind of online sleuthing and pinpointed the genesis around 2008, so making it less than 9 years old. And in 2013, the American Dialect Society chose this as their word of the year, citing reasons like it exploding with new possibilities, and then simply because helpful. So the significance of my study specifically tries to put quantitative and qualitative analysis more rigorously in a more formal way. Currently, the syntactic structure has been commented on to varying degrees, but none of that mentions the kind of decline of grammaticality that has existed for this word. And diachronic study in general is simply not available. So my central research questions were, in what ways has the word because become grammaticalized, particularly in the past quarter century? And then secondly, is its newest distribution, so because plus reasons, etc., compatible with this climb? And so to understand this current trend, we need to go back, and I'm going to analyze some corpora from the last 200 or so years, and then also do a qualitative analysis of the genesis of the word because in Middle English, and then its trajectory across all those linguistic analysis, analytical type of subfields since then. So on your handout, there's some more specificity around the types of things that I was looking for, and across all of the three corpora I looked at. Specifically, I was looking for environments that could potentially produce this new type of structure. And I also kept the glossing that the Oxford English Dictionary used for the polysemes that they had marked throughout its history, just for consistency. I think we'll see that there are some reasons that glossing may need to, at the very least, be updated. So first, from the corpus of historical American English, which is a written word corpus from 1810 through 2010. So usage is basically split between preposition and conjunction predominantly, and conjunction has a higher edge. But interestingly, because of, so any construction with because of is the single highest collocation, so at 40% of the collocations here. I next looked at the corpus of contemporary American English, which is at one time was the largest database in English. And this looks at spoken and written word sources in American English. And in this year, 200 tokens that I looked at from 1990 through 2015, conjunctive use has increased fairly dramatically, and any other adverbial or other types of usage has dropped out. I next looked at news on the web, which is a gigantic web-based corpus, international corpus that goes from 2010 through yesterday. Interestingly here, conjunctive use has almost completely overtaken other arguments. And we do actually see emergence of the new form, which was the kernel of my research. And of 400 tokens, there were two examples. And these are the two examples. It's dumb because Hillary Clinton, a noun phrase introduction, and then an adverbial phrase. I won't go to see it because PG-13. And so now that we've known what's going on for the last 200 years, I want to present some data that looks at the whole Klein from its source in Middle English through today. So again, there's more details on the handout, but lexicalization occurs basically within the first 50 years of its emergence as a compound preposition. So the periphrastic by cause becomes orthographically at least hyphenated and then compounded, and then completely changes to monomorphemic. And that happens by the end of the 15th century. It's pretty consistent in the writing. So this is a very normal part of grammaticalization, so something that had lexical separable components, free morphemes like by, which is a preposition, and cause, which is a noun, those becoming inseparable, and I think native speakers not being able to disambiguate those morphemes. This helped it to lose its collocations, although some persisted. Syntactically, so in Middle English, for those of you that are comfortable with Middle English, Periphrastic constructions could be used adverbally in this case. Glossed as a compound preposition, taking a noun complement. Interestingly, always needed that or a y, so some pro form. And we see a quote here from the 14th century, by cause that he was her neighbor. For this reason, he was her neighbor. So doesn't quite have a referential meaning quite yet. After that, the adverbial use could be used more pragmatically, and as soon as that occurred, there comes to be conjunctive types of meanings. And then in just the last probably 20 years, there's been evidence that syntacticians gloss this as a subordinating preposition instead of a conjunction. Semantically, so we talked about it being a sentential adverb, meaning by way of. So this is from the 14th century. Very soon it's been extended to refer to the antecedent's reason, still collocated with y, as in this example, because y, from 1390. So an elliptical use occurs actually very early, and this has spawned a conjunctive meaning. Most of the elliptical or other adverbial polysemes have fallen out completely by the 17th century, but the conjunctive meaning has persisted. So for the reason of the antecedent, the example here, put him away because he is dangerous. And this now coexists, and we saw earlier from the corpora data that this has come to predominate the word usage. The newest form, so introducing some other lexical item or lexeme, is bleached further. So it's getting its semantic and most of the morphophonological weight from the argument. Of has been all but omitted, and we'll see on another slide that the syntactic distribution has been further reduced. So what is happening with the current form? We've looked at some past forms and corporate data. Because exists in a paradigm with other subordinating prepositions, like although, until, since, as some examples. But the new form is more fixed syntactically. We would expect in those, in that paradigm, for those items to be able to move with their constituents. But this newest usage, in fact, cannot. So from Gresham McCulloch, I hate you because reasons. This is acceptable. Because reasons, I hate you. This is not acceptable. So in general, my hypothesis is this new syntactic arrangement is coming about because of semantic blocking, and this is based on pragmatic conditions. Of course, this is more recently highly referential, and the semantic field is based on the context of the discourse, but it does rely a lot on the recent ironic or other use. So this kind of marked syntactic form. And the syntagms that are being selected, just in like the 11th hour, I've found other lexemes, in this case an interjection, that's used. And so noun phrase, adverbial phrase, interjection, much different from clausal or preposition types of selections that persisted for hundreds of years. So some things that I did not look at, sociolinguistic factors or dissecting the community of users. I also did not search for either tokens of or instances qualitatively of reduced or otherwise modified phonological forms like cause and cuz. And I will open it up to any questions.
Maybe this is just a comment, I'm not sure yet,
Sure.
because I asked you a version of this that one at the other presentation, I keep thinking about the connection to since,
Yes.
but I think the fact that since, which has a similar semantic meaning, similar meaning to because, can take a clause, or can take a noun phrase, or like since 10 o'clock,
Sure.
or since I last saw you, right? So it can take the same things. But I think that those are different meanings for since. So there's the since as in time, that has to do with time, can only be used with time expression, same thing. Since last year, since time memorial, since.
Yeah.
And then that one can't take since reasons, right? I mean, the other one that introduces a clause.
Yes.
Can't take a noun phrase that's not a time one. Since reasons. So, I mean, I think before I was thinking, oh, but what about since? It's just like, it already takes a noun phrase. But
Yeah.
I don't think the same since, that means the same thing as because can take a noun phrase with that meaning. I don't think there was a question there. But.
Yeah, well, I have a comment back, at least, which is that in the course of my study, I did look at a couple, including since, in that subordinate preposition paradigm. And there has been a lot of work on the difference between since and for and seit in German. And their linked polysemes and the types of arguments that they can take. So I would just put that out there to that research. Yeah.
Yeah, the most interesting of the example is the phrase "because reasons" seems to be.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's simply just making a compound preposition into a simple preposition by contracting it. And then you have a certain stylistic field, a certain group is doing it. But because reasons, I'm trying to figure out, does that mean that I have my reasons, but I don't really feel like I want to tell you? It's a little bit of a stylistic marking or a flippancy almost. Just like
Yes.
if you just say, well, because, and not explain why. Because you don't really explain the reason. Because already means that there's a reason. And that seemed to me to be interesting because it might be becoming a phrase in addition to this change in the syntax that's happening. That might be turning into a marked phrase expressing a certain emotion.
Yeah. So when I looked at the historical Kleins, the rise did come from this reduced form. So certainly it could have come from the clausal form, this polyseme giving rise to this instead of the other way around, or potentially a commentary, using the one form a new way. So it would be interesting to, I think, have more data of because reasons and those types of argument to understand its trajectory more, because it does seem to be born out of a contracted form of that very particular phrase. Dr. Curtis?
Another piece that kind of bothered me, I'd like to see more examples of it because plus some other NPs. Because it does sound very elliptical. Because
Sure.
reasons in square brackets, meaning insert reasons here. Because Hillary Clinton or because science.
Right.
Those seem less elliptical or, than others. But I also was thinking about, I'm wondering about the preference for prepositions, it may be syntactically, if there's something bigger in this preference for prepositions over subordinate conjunctions. I'm thinking of
Sure.
different from and different than, but maybe that's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we do say different than, there's a preference to say different than me and different from me as opposed to different than I am or different. And we're playing with that difference as well. I'm wondering if it is any way in any way syntactically similar to because. We'd rather not say the whole sentence, we'd rather.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know exactly that answer, but I will say in the course of my research again, there does seem to be a trend specifically from the late 90s to be using this category, subordinating preposition, for preferentially over something like conjunction, which I think is more typical. But so I don't know exactly where it's situated in that class, and from frequency or other types of perspectives. Yeah.
Because we like to say prepositions are a focused class, but it seems like we just created a preposition here and also with than, in a sense, maybe.
Yeah. And that would not, so there's some details on the handout about unidirectionality, but this type of movement potentially from a conjunction to a preposition would be highly atypical and does not seem to be supported by the historical record. In fact, these polysemes developed differently and have persisted, one as a preposition, one as a conjunction. So I don't think I answered your question, but I hope I commented in some way. Dr. Shing?
I think the alternative way to explain that situation is to differentiate from preposition. It could be considered as a discourse particle
Yes.
instead of a preposition, especially in that case, and because reason. And it's very different from, say, because of a Hillary. That's clearly a preposition use, where because reasons that definitely has more discourse
Yes.
content in there.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I was thinking about the difference between the since and because. I think the since is limited to the temporal. That is generally the early stage of in the grammaticalization climb, and it's normally start with temporal and then move to spatial. And for that kind of quality or conditional, these kind of discourse conjunction function normally comes later. So I would consider, because it's a kind of to lean towards the other end of the grammaticalization climb, where things is still kind of early. Yeah, because temporal is very still kind of concrete. Where if you think because of the certain reason or certain condition, or that is more, I think, I call it more qualitative type of concept.
Do you guys, this one? Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick
Sure.
relation to another term was because reasons is also, I think it might be kind of similar to like for science, kind of like, yeah, or like, oh hey, do you know that cute girl over there's name? Like, yeah, why? And you're like, oh, for science.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
similar in that kind of a cheeky.
Yeah, ironic tone, sure. Mm-hmm. Jordan?
Yeah, I'll ask you. No, it's just a question for you.
Okay,
I'll ask you.
okay,
All right,
great.
we better stay a little bit on track, so thank you.